There we go. No intro, no fancy stuff. We're just going to roll it on in. That's literally how we're doing it. We're no big dramas. Just making sure that the audio is actually coming through, which is always very, very helpful to do. But let's just hit the button and let's just roll it on in for a little while. Let's see what we can do on that front. Just get it shared out in a few places. Good evening, Richard. We're just going to let people roll in. Like I say, no big dramas or anything like that. Not doing a full stream. Just figured, because I'd actually said in the last one, in the last proper What's Current, that I'd come on tonight and then realised that it's not the last Wednesday of the month. But a few bits have happened. Got a few people sort of said, "Are you doing anything?" And yeah, just kind of rolling it like that. Not an awful lot, obviously a few bits and pieces happening, but like I say, let's get some people in, let's get folk on, share it out, wheel it out, been firing out the links and bits and pieces like that. Still, I think that part of you, especially for something small, because let's face it, right, British hockey is not a huge venture for a lot of people on YouTube and stuff like that, so learning how to kind of play the algorithm a bit of getting posts kind of shared out and bits and pieces is always a bit of a fun one. That's always fun. It's always a bit of fun and games. So if you're in the chat, say hello, click the buttons and all those bits and pieces. Make sure you say hi. Essentially, what we're going to do, we're just going to hang out and chill for about half an hour or so. And I figure rather than kind of doing a big full whack rundown of all the big news, I'm going to talk about a couple of bits and pieces I kind of want to talk about very quickly. And let's basically just have the chat open. Let's just talk about stuff, I think, because there's obviously lots of stuff going on. Let's throw some questions out there. If anything that you guys want to talk about, hear about from me. And like I say, I've got a few bits and pieces I want to talk about as well. We're only a couple of minutes in. So obviously the link's out there. So if you're watching, hit share, get it out in bits and pieces like that. I know there's obviously a few people obviously starting to trickle in and so on and so forth. And like I say, all done a bit sort of slapdash, but nothing overly drastic. Just, but yeah, I figured, as I said, I'd come back on the 24th. This is the 24th. I figured I'd at least kind of poke my head over the parapet and let's just do something a bit more casual. And then next week, Wednesday the 31st, which is actually the proper last Wednesday of July, we'll do the full What's Current stream with all the usual fixings and bits and pieces like that. But I figure I'm here now. So today is Wednesday the 24th of July, and I am 40 in 2 days. So I kind of wanted to kind of nod my head towards that because I started BOTW as a much younger man. I was 20, how old was I? 27. 27, no, how old was I? Was I 26? No, I was 26, nearly 27. When 26 in March of 2011. Yeah, I'm really losing track of things. Yes, because I got married in 2010, and I was 26 years old when I got married, and then started Banners on the Wall the following March. So I was 26 years old when BOTW started, and I'm about to turn 40. And I figured kind of poking my head above the parapet and kind of acknowledging just this massive chunk of my life as I hit 40 years old, and I'm now an old-ish man on that kind of front. But I figured just something, like I say, a bit loose, a bit of chat, a few bits and pieces. Like I say, Richard Robertson in the chat. Obviously great news for Rich and his family. His son Xander, of course, scorer of the game-winning goal in the Division 2 South Playoff Finals. And Xander is off to spend the year with the Milton Keynes Thunder. Great opportunity for him in Division 1. Of course, the question will always kind of exist with the MK Thunder of how competitive as a roster are they going to be. Great to see, though, that Xander's getting that opportunity at Div 1 level after really impressing last year in Div 2. With Buffalo, of course, everything's pausing in Basingstoke, and we'll talk about that in a bit if people want to. But yeah, great opportunity for Xander, really pleased. Fixture disaster in Division 1 and 2. It's certainly not gone well in a bunch of places. D-side, for those of you who haven't seen things about the NIHL, the NIHL structure, D-side Dragons put out, from Division 1 North, put out a statement saying that they were not happy with the fixtures, and they were, they weren't going to talk about anything until they'd got a few bits and pieces sorted. I suppose the first question that immediately leaps to my mind was, isn't this the point of the fixture meeting? This is surely what this was all there for, was to talk out these bits and pieces. So it begs the question of either A, D-side didn't go, or B, they went and got such a bum deal that they've taken everything back and just cannot get the dates they want with the rink. Obviously very problematic in D-side as well then this year, given that they've chucked out the new team. They've got the second team there now, the D-side Ducks, who are going to be playing in 2 North. But the Ducks have got their dates in. It's the Dragons who don't. And bit weird that one. Obviously issues as well down in the south. South 1, my understanding, is had to scrap its initially planned playoff format. They'll be changing their playoffs. They were going to do groups, and then have had to move to doing 2-legged quarterfinals and 2-legged semi-finals to provide teams into that new Division 1 and Division 2 playoff sort of weekend, like big weekend that they're going to do, kind of thing. So that's thrown up issues there. We've also seen in South 2 the Cardiff Canucks have none of their home dates confirmed, and the I believe none of Cardiff Canucks home dates are confirmed. I believe 2 away dates are not confirmed either. One of which is their away game at Solent, which I said to Trevor Hendricks I wanted to be at because I want to see Trevor Hendricks' face having to deal with her because he's never been to Gosport before. Joe Scuts in the chat, the man, the myth, the legend, NIHL Stats himself. Joe was really kind to let me see kind of a little bit behind the scenes of some of the stuff that he's doing. If he pulls this off, it's going to look really good. Everyone's going to be very, very happy, but they should be happy with Joe anyway because Joe's the man. Solihull publicly stated they're looking at fixtures too. Again, why did you all have a fixture meeting? Also, where did Solihull say that? Did they say it by homing pigeon, or was it on their Facebook? Because Solihull social media is interesting in terms of its usage, but so that's not ideal for anybody. Not an awful lot of grumbling out of the national division in terms of fixtures. Lots of good. They seem to have got that pretty nailed down. And I think this is kind of thing we saw as well out of that national division press release that they put out. The national division appears that it's going to be given a lot more autonomy. Now, the national division has always been kind of autonomous in a lot of ways anyhow, because there is more money involved. It's much more sports business run than Divisions 1 and Division 2, which is a bit more sort of amateur, a bit more sort of amateur sports club style of doing bits and pieces. But certainly one of the things they have done for a while, and a lot of it has been kind of done through Steve Nell and Aaron Nell, which has been kind of sort of sorting out the fixtures and bits and pieces like that, and it's generally worked okay. MK Thunder have 2 dates, 29th and 25th, that clash with Lightning home games. My response to that, Jamie, would be, I'm pretty certain, and if he's not in the chat, he will probably appear at some stage. Andrew Day's been to days in Sheffield, where he's watched all 3 NIHL teams in a day. So unless MK have specifically said that they're facing off at the same time, it's the Thunder are facing off at the same time as the Lightning. It's possible to do both. Like that, you could have Hockey Day in MK. Wouldn't be a terrible plan. Facebook page, says Joe. Not a huge surprise there. I kind of wish teams would kind of just, get one of those sort of like things that you can get that kind of just posts everything all together. That's why Andrew Day's not turned up. He's posting about the Queen Bees having players back. Who's that? Who's back for the Queen Bees? Amelia Williams. Very, very good. One of my really fun experiences last year was just that kind of that eye-opening moment of watching the Women's Elite League and watching the Queen Bees in particular, who are just something else. They are very, very good. Really, really like that kind of thing. Solihull Barons. I'm just also going to have if I can spell Solihull and Baron. Interesting, I've just typed in Solihull into Facebook and it's the first thing it recommended for me was Solihull Vixen, so that tells you what you need to know on that one, I feel, by the look of it. Cheers, Glass Mac. Congratulations, of course, one person who that's been properly announced since the last time we were on air, of course, Matt, who's in the chat. James McElroy, now the general manager of the Sheffield Steel Dogs. Great bit of news. Very, very delighted for Matt that's come off. Lots of good stuff on that one. I know a lot of people talk about hockey people being in charge of things. Well, Mac is a hockey person. People will not always agree with people's opinions on kind of things, but the idea of having somebody, as well as the fact that given Mac's kind of career in the RAF, he's used to dealing with things that maybe don't always work the way they should. So British hockey should be good for him. But either way, all the best for it, mate. Certainly that Sheffield team's looking like a barrel of laughs right now, especially after the news yesterday of the addition for 2 years on this two-way contract with the Dogs and the Steelers of Ivan Björkley-Nordstrom. That, of course, will have put a cat amongst some pigeons on that front. Obviously, because he was announced as being back this year for Peterborough. They obviously announced him back around sort of Christmas time last year. But yes, Emilian Williams is ruler. Andrew, there is Mr. Day, who was, of course, at Alton Towers today. Currently with the 29th September, I agree. Lightning versus Solway at 4. Thunder versus Streatham at 7:15. Very happy. I'll be very happy on my 30th birthday weekend. Getting Ben Painter to agree to a 7:15 face of an MK might be a bit of a stretch on a Sunday, but certainly there's definitely ways to work around that. There's definitely ways to work around these kind of things. I saw as well, actually, Jamie, you mentioned that there's a game in December where they don't have any ice. I assume that's probably the Christmas show, but all such things. Dave Vaughan, thanks for joining the chat. I reckon Steel Dogs will be very strong next season. The National is shaping up to be one of the most competitive leagues in years. Mr. Bison, though. You and me both, Sunshine. But of course, that's the big news out of Basingstoke, is that the Buffalo are out, the juniors are out, because the lease is on the verge of being signed, and once that lease is signed, the company that are called Nice Leisure, which is just Planet Ice's vehicle for buying back the rink off of the company they sold it to, they have 3 months to begin the work to begin the refurb on the rink at Basingstoke, meaning that feasibly, given the proximity of how close everything is to being officially legally over the line, it's just not feasible for the clubs to run. That was the message that was given by the council to the junior club. The junior club held their emergency general meeting last week, which I was invited to by Stuart Tempest, the chairman of the junior club, and that's so I was there to be able to kind of to sort of listen in and sort of chuck in my tuppence worth of that. So it's a bit strange because for those of you who remember the beginning of last season, I wrote about the last bottle of beer that I got from the supporters club at the end of 22-23, and I said I wasn't going to open it until the Bison were either confirmed dead or we're back, and it looks like I'm going to have to wait a little bit longer, but it is still sat in the corner over there in my house. That still sat in the corner, hiding behind the broom, just kind of out of the way, waiting for the moment where I need to know where I'm going to do with it or not. And I remember actually very briefly after everything happened, I wrote that piece, and Councillor Alex Lee, who's the head of the Labour group on the Basingstoke and Dean Council, sent me a message saying, like, when we get this all over the line and we're back, bring it and drink it at the first game, which firstly a bit of a problem because I drive the games for the most part, and actually what I kind of wanted to do rather than that, I might speak to John Neville and see if I can break it on the side like they do on the side of a ship when it's kind of ready to go, but it's still there, still ready to kind of do bits and pieces. The split's been very old. Chelmsford normally have 1, max 2 home Saturday games. This season it's 7. Is that a problem? I know Sunday's kind of a tradition. Here's the thing, right? Teams who have their home games traditionally on a Sunday will always be weird to me because in my head, Saturday night is hockey night for the most part. And yeah, I've been kind of bouncing Last season did a bunch of Saturdays, bunch of Sundays, kind of depending on where I was going. So, but Saturday night is hockey night for me. So people are sort of going, "Oh, it's weird having it on a Saturday." My old brain don't like it. Didn't the Thunder always have a 7-ish face-off time last season? Generally, yeah. It's whether like I say, I mean, Stratton would probably just roll up and do it. I mean, they generally start quite late on a Sunday anyway. Like I think they're 6:45 on a Sunday on the high road, which is a pig of a time, by the way. That Saturday face-off time, going if the Lightning are not playing at home, 6:45 is the normal Sunday face-off time. I thought so. I know that. But yeah, 6:45 on a Sunday is usually Stratham's face-off time as well. They face off early on a Saturday and late on a Sunday. I must have missed you. Sorry, I was on the Teams call, Richard. That's why you didn't see me because I wasn't there. I was ethereally there, sat there listening in between, kind of trying to get Nathan sorted for his bath into the bargain. So that went really well on that front. But yeah, I mean, other bits and pieces. Like I say, we're not gonna be on it for tons and tons of time. I think just like a quick one to just kind of chat through a few bits. Chuck your questions in the chat. Anything else we kind of want to talk about? Because there's a bunch of stuff going on that we can kind of talk about that I'm kind of happy to talk about. The one thing I will say now, because I have the clearance to do it, is that one of the things you are going to get next year on banners on the wall is there's going to be a bit of an increase in some Elite League bits, only because where I obviously did some commentary last year for the Guildford Flames. I've been speaking to the Flames this week, and I will be back for commentary in Guildford for Elite League bits and pieces this coming season. At the moment, last year I did 3 games. This year I am signed up for 7, including a stretch of 4 games back-to-back around the November-December time. At the Mo. So there is going to be a bit of an interesting one in terms of what I do, because that's kind of a month out of the NIHL, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing for me. Now, in terms of my commentary bits and pieces, because those of you who've been paying attention, last year I did a couple of games in the National with the Bees, I did a game in the National with Solway, I did 3 games with the Flames, I then did that random game commentating over Twitter for the Guildford Phoenix and the Haringey Huskies at the back end of the year, and then I did the NIHL finals weekend in Coventry. So I did about, what did I do? 3, 6, 7. So I did about 11 games of commentary total last year across a bunch of different divisions and stuff. So I, when the Flames contacted me, they basically said, like, they're keeping Luke, I believe it's Luke and Elliot, the guys who they usually use, but they had a bunch of available dates. There were a couple I couldn't do, mostly kind of around family things around Christmas, and my mum's also turning 70 on the 2nd of January next year, so I figured I should probably be around for that. But I'm also essentially, I had to turn down a couple, but 7 dates between the beginning of September and the end of 2024 in the Elite League, which is going to be great for me in terms of improving my commentary ability. I don't think I'm terrible now, but the ability to kind of do more, and also that run of games back to back, like having 4 straight weeks, I think is going to be really, really good for me. But what it also does is it will give me a very different perspective on hockey. It means I will kind of be at the NIHL on the outside looking in again, which will be good to do, I think, in some ways, because I've watched so much stuff in the last year, and watched Elite League as a bit part kind of thing. Whereas if I'm going to watch more Elite League, there's some bits and pieces that I think are going to kind of alter my perceptions a bit as to what I see, what I look for, and ultimately I think it'll make me better. It'll make BOTW better because different experiences, broadens experiences, means better content from me as a result. I think that's pretty cool. The other thing as well is I obviously did my excursion to Solway last November. My plan is to try and do at least one more northern excursion. I don't necessarily know where yet. Part of me wants to go back. Part of me doesn't. Part of me wants to go Part of me wants to go back to Dumfries, but part of me as well wants to go somewhere else in the north. Billingham. A lot of people up in Billingham have said I should go to Billingham. Part of me wants to go to Hull only because I've not been to Hull in a really, really long time, and I think it'd be really interesting to see the Seahawks up close, particularly as well. As I did so much reporting around their founding. Might go to Cov or Solihull because that'd be quite good to do. Just having a look. Some bits and pieces. Because, there's certainly some bits and... having a look at some bits and pieces. Sorry, someone's just sent me through a message, which we'll just have a proper look at in a moment. Let's have a quick look at the chat, because people have chucked some stuff in there. Lightning will play Bristol at home on Friday the 18th of October to celebrate the 10 years today since going back to the rink after the refurb. Where has that time gone? I remember being at the second Lightning game back in MK, which was against Basingstoke, and coming out with builder's dust all over my shoes. I was baffled by the player registration fees at NIHL 1 and 2 pay more than the national division. I can't comment on that, to be honest, Richard, but I wonder if the clubs have banded together to subsidise bits. Showing your southern bias there, calling commentary the north. Hey, the commentary NIHL Blaze are in north too. Commentary NIHL Blaze are in north too. That's not north. It's not northern. It's not southern bias to call them in the north, even though commentary is 100% the north. Here's the other thing as well, Scotsy, I have to remember. Scotsy, of course, is very much from the south, just like me. I've never lived in Britain. I've never lived north of the River Thames. South London boy who grew up between South London and Surrey, and then I moved to Southampton. Literally, and Joe is what is Joe? 15 minutes away from me by car. Like if we go, we have two options when we go south. We go south one bit, we get the Isle of Wight. We go south further, we get France. So yeah. I'm definitely... You're going to come to the NHL South 1 opener. See, this was the thing. I'm confused as to where I go now, because I have actually got Guildford's home opener. They have their first competitive home game of the season is Sunday the 8th of September, I want to say, and is against Manchester in the Cup. Yours truly is commentating on the Flames competitive home opener. So I will have a look at the end of August and kind of figure out where I'm going for some of the pre-season stuff, get my warm-up going, and then kind of work it out from there on that front. Now, I've just had a message come to me from somebody, from one of my sources who is pretty trustworthy on these bits and pieces. Mr. Gadsby, you've logged in with the wrong YouTube channel there, Sunshine. Well done. Just looking at some bits and pieces, by the look of it, some of the interesting stuff around moving games there. The word appears to be that only senior teams in PI rinks are going to be allowed to have games over the Christmas period. So the non-senior teams, so some of those lower down NHL teams, are not going to be able to ice. We'll get some more confirmation on that if I can, but this would explain why the Thunder have had to move some stuff around. I assume as well that for NHL perspective as well, there's going to be that bit about balancing bits and pieces as well with the junior and the women's teams. One of the things that England Ice Hockey have told me, I mean, no one will put their name to it, and it's one of those things that's kind of off the record, but everybody knows it. England Ice Hockey is really, really keen to make sure that, in terms of scheduling, that junior games and women's games don't get completely shanked by the NIHL. And I get that. That's a necessary evil there as well. But certainly by the look of it, if the senior teams in rinks will be okay, and then others outside of that will have to kind of work around bits and pieces. And I don't know. And Scutsy, if he's in the chat, will remind me of this. Because I remember last year there was just a massive, massive gap in South 1 where just games weren't played for about the better part of a fortnight. And then they came back after Christmas with this really random game between Slough and Solent on a Wednesday night in the middle of the Christmas holiday period. So that should be fun. What else we got in the chat? PI showing its love for ice hockey. PI will argue that it's about keeping ice free for a bunch of different things over the Christmas period. And you've got to remember here, Dave, as well, the ice dancers will be doing their Christmas shows, which will happen at most Planet Ice rinks, whether it's MK, whether it's Coventry, whether it's Gosport. And so it's worth bearing that in mind. So it's not necessarily a case of PI not showing its love for hockey, but it's about the fact that there will be that extra added pressure of profitable public skates, ice shows, as well as needing to accommodate women's hockey and the juniors. And also they should be doing things at sensible times as well. Like, the women shouldn't have to play at stupid o'clock at night. Thank you, Joe. I knew that game was rearranged to that point for a reason. Thank you about that. Yes, that would of course make sense. Not announced, but MK will play Coventry on Friday the 30th of August at the Sky Dome and Saturday the 31st at the Thunderdome. Looking forward to that. Should be good. Really interested to see how Coventry look as well with some of those younger Brits in. Brindley Caps as an Elite League player is going to be exciting. I personally think rinks need to accommodate women's hockey better at more reasonable times. 100% agree. Certainly the 5:15 face-off I went to at Guildford, that's perfect all the time if you can get it. Wildcats sort of announced Gail Lebwelly and Colby Tower next season. Yeah, massive shout to all the folk down in Swindon as well with the passing of Kieran. I appreciate that's probably why a lot of things got binned off today, but I totally appreciate as well why Swindon sort of posted and then had to delete what they said about Lebwelly and Colby Tower. Obviously, a bunch of the players have posted about Kieran's passing as well, so hopefully the Cats will find a way to kind of honour him when the season begins. Lebwelly and Tower being back is a shame, but not a big surprise. I think there's upgrades to be made there if they are findable, but it's also potentially as well what Tower and Lebwelly want to do themselves. Tower might be back aboard his fishing boat and just fancy playing senior AAA, and Lebwelly has the ability to kind of, it's the nature of being a Canadian import. He's got 2 seasons of pretty decent numbers and some achievements under his belt. Like, Swindon isn't the be all and end all, and perhaps he just wants to travel around, but it frees up 2 import spots for a Wildcats club that have now got some new investment into it now. Of course, they got a new shareholder. The guy behind their title sponsor, Bespoke Guardians, has put some money in now to become a shareholder of the Wildcats. And there's stuff there. Like, Swindon are able to do things. So they will get some names. What are your thoughts on Hallam Wilson going to the Bees? Good signing. Hallam Wilson has absolutely earned the right to do whatever he wants to this year, in my personal opinion. Where him and Paul Petts dropped into South 2 out of the National when the Bison went out, basically to just kind of run the Buffalo and keep things going in Basingstoke when they really didn't have to and didn't need to. A lot of people, I know obviously there was some perturbation, I think, when they went into the Buffalo, if nothing else because the Buffalo had always kind of been this place for the kids coming out of the junior system as their sort of first foray into senior hockey, and all of a sudden you had Paul Petts and you had Hallam Wilson, and then they got in people like they got in some of their friends from other places. Dan Weller-Evans came back, and then Harry Harcup came in, and Tom Banner came back when he got released by Oxford after that weird sort of debacle of an ending he had there. And then they get Adam Jones, which was ridiculous. Like, Adam Jones playing South 2, like immediately the best player in the league by various countries worth of miles. And obviously getting that playoff title, which was a great little sort of middle finger up at the entire situation that's happened in Basingstoke. Hallam Wilson has a skill set. For me, he'll be middle 6 energy for the Bees. He has a deceptively good shot, I should say this as well, and it's obviously a much more effective shot at South 2. I saw him beat Solon's goalkeeper standing up from the hash marks because he shot so fast and so hard. The keeper just didn't react at all. He didn't know what to do. So there's that element of it. Hallam Wilson, of course, does not need to be the offensive fulcrum he was in South 2 for the Bees, but he's got a skill set, and where the Bees roster is not the deepest right now in terms of just sheer numbers. He is going to be a guy who knows how the National League works, knows what needs to happen. He will be a good team guy. And yeah, ultimately, whatever him and Paul Petts choose to do this year, if the Buffalo are out, like, whatever. Like, they have more than earned, like, they've more than earned the respect of everybody from this neck of the woods in terms of doing what they need to do. Like, if they want to play this year, go play wherever is going to make you happy. Will put some beer money in your pocket and knock you out. If they don't want to play and they want to wait it out, or they just want to go coach somewhere, whatever. Like, that is entirely their choice. They have my respect for doing something that they didn't need to do, but chose to do. And not only they did it really well, and they turned that Buffalo side from, lucky punchers into beating the league champions in the playoff semi-final, and then beating the hosts in Alexandra Palace, a team that had beaten them in the league. They got shanked in the cup as well for something that wasn't their fault, so they could have arguably had 2 trophies out of the year. But they nixed the Grand Slam on the Saturday and then pulled off a fantastic win on the Sunday. That and we bashed on about it, and we keep saying it because it's not just about on the ice, it's off the ice too. Like, Basingstoke never dies, and Hallam Wilson was probably, from my understanding, never got involved in those kind of bits and pieces. He just wanted to turn up and train and play. So you will get a guy who will turn up, he'll train, and he'll play. He'll put his effort into it. And if nothing else, he's got a trophy as a coach. So he can coach, so he can help there too. 4 PI rinks had new ice this summer, yet the worst ice is a PI rink in Peterborough has not been done. Madness. Well, the issue there, of course, is it going to do anything, and what's the state of the plant? Can you turn the plant off to do it? Will the plant turn back on? This is always the fear in Basingstoke. Turn the plant off and it might never return. So on that front, the other thing. So what have I touched on? I've touched on future BOTW bits. I've touched on the commentary and what that's going to look like, especially given that November bit. Yeah, that November bit of mid to late December, November, early December is just going to be a bit weird. Still going to run the shows and everything like that. Obviously, Banners on the Road is just going to be quite heavily focused, and so I might start writing some different bits in terms of telling the story in slightly different ways, because obviously it'll be the same team back to back to back. But should be interesting. Like I say, I'm really interested to see. I think if I'm right, I've got the Clan, Fife, Coventry, and Nottingham in that stretch. I'm not actually, no, tell a lie. It'll be Manchester rather than the Clan in that front. So I'll get to see some of the up and coming, these British players who kind of, not obviously Sheffield and Belfast, who've signed like a bajillion 2-ways, but some of these other guys. So obviously not in that November bit, but if the Clan are down, I might get to see Archie Salisbury. Fife have obviously got some Brits that I haven't seen. The last time I saw Fife playing Guildford, it was a Wednesday night in the Cup, and they brought none of their British players. Coventry, I get to see Brindley Caps, so that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, there'll be some good stuff there, I think, in terms of content, and it'll give me some different perspectives when I come back to watching the NHL full time. Pretty much the same as Invicta. Yeah, Invicta, that's an interesting one as well. Obviously, the recent announcement that Aaron Connolly coming in has been made captain. I totally get why Aaron Connolly's been made captain, because it's Aaron Connolly and he's really, really good at it. I think as well, like, a tip of a hat needs to go to Harrison Lillis, because he's obviously put a lot of time, dedicated a lot to that club, and that's going to be a shifting of a situation for Harrison, who has done so much for that team. And I think there's something to be said of, like, you don't need a letter to lead sometimes, and actually and sometimes these changes have to happen. Obviously, it's Carl Lennon's change, but he's obviously named Aaron Connolly as captain, and he's got Louis Colvin and Dan Scott as his 2 alternates. Dan Scott was an alternate last year, of course, so that's 2 of his 3 sort of lettered leaders changing over the summer. But yeah, I think totally get why. But like I say as well, I think there's the 2 parallel tracks here. Just make sure you put respect on Harrison and his name, because he's got to be close to a candidate, Harrison, for jersey retirement there. I appreciate he posted it and then took it out because he posted it on the wrong account. But Chris Gadsby obviously very, very quickly popped in and mentioned about one of the more interesting pieces of news out of North One, which is the announcement that Alex Padalecki, having left the Peterborough Phantoms, is now going to have his jersey retired by the Peterborough Phantoms, who feel like they've got a lot of retired numbers in Peterborough, but is now the player assistant coach of the Nottingham Lions, which is a really interesting turn up for the books there. Lions have obviously got their 2 imports lined up now. I forget the name of the other lad, because the other lad is an import who was born in Britain, but does not. He played no junior hockey over here, as he's all Canadian trained. Let's just quickly grab up his name as well, because he was born. I did notice he was born in Epsom. Wyatt Scott, who was the other import. But Alex Padalecki in North One, of course, that replaces the fact that Zach Yokoyama has left the Nottingham Lions to come into the National and play for Telford. But Padalecki in North One is going to be really interesting, because let's face it, we all know he's not the fastest player on the ice, but his hockey IQ is going to be an absolute metric mile away from everybody else. If all goes to playing Basingstoke Anthony with the rink refurb, is the plan for all Basingstoke teams to be back in their set league of 25-26. Yes, as Richard Robinson has put them in the chat, Jamie, that is the plan. 25-26 will see the return of hockey at all levels to Basingstoke. Now, the Bison is going to be an interesting one, because completely building a team from scratch when there's arguably a player shortage in the south of England is going to be interesting. But in my heart, there's definitely a few guys who will come back to Basingstoke irrespective, and I think that extra National League opportunity for some of those guys in the south. Basingstoke are not going to come in and smash through the league, but I feel that they will become a place in the first instance of where guys can kind of either get second chances, get first chances, and kind of work it out from there. But a lot will depend on what happens from a coaching perspective, of course. We know Tony Redmond's gone to become Barry McKenzie's assistant coach in Bristol. Ashley Tate is now associate coach with Dom Gabai at the Bees. And it's they might be situations that are better for them. Admittedly, I'm pretty certain Tony Redmond can be tempted back to Basingstoke if needs be. If nothing else from a Basingstoke perspective, there's another number that needs to go up on that wall that was announced in that final game against Leeds. So we need to have that retirement ceremony for Alex Metham at some stage. So that will be, yes, the plan, as far as I'm aware, is that will happen. Right. I've gone about 7 minutes longer than I was initially kind of intending to, but there we are. Forgive the scepticism, but weren't we told the Bison would be back this season initially and then nothing happened? I hope it doesn't drag on again. But a chunk of that, Dave, was to do with the situation surrounding the rink and the lease. We are at that point now where that lease is going to be signed, and I don't know whether you missed it at the beginning, but when that lease is signed, Planet Ice have 3 months to start the work. The welly back to the Bison would be nice to see too. It would be. It obviously massively depends on what happens. I say now, if Basingstoke do return, look at conferences for the National League for 25-26. 2 groups of 6 or 3 groups of 4. I'd probably reckon they'd go 2 times 6 rather than 3 times 4, because it would be easier to work out from a fixtures perspective. You also get less of the Nottingham Sheffield 50 bajillion times a season situation. I'd hope Northcliffe goes back. Yeah, I mean Northcliffe to Streatham is a case of, I think, being closer to home. George is Guildford based. I'd have George Northcliffe back in the National Division in a heartbeat. He can still very much play National Division. I think the lure of having had a couple of tough years in Basingstoke and then quite a wonky year last year in Romford, the notion of being able to play and do very well, because let's face it, Streatham are not going to go quietly into the night, in spite of how good Chelmsford look, in spite of how good Slough look. This is going to be it's still Streatham looking like they're leading the way at the moment. There's a cat. Yes, there is a cat behind me. I did wonder what that was, if there wasn't the thing there. But yes, quickly, last call. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings. Chuck what you want in the chat. I'll take a few more bits and pieces and then we'll head out of here. Like I say, no big fanfare. We're just having a bit of a chat. As you're doing that, I know somebody says, like I say, it's my birthday on Friday. I have been turning 40. Feels like a bigger birthday for some than it probably is. I've just feel very, very reflective about the fact, and it's probably due to the fact my wife turned 40 at the beginning of the month as well. And like the last year has been mental. And I sat back and was thinking about this, and I had this very, very big, very sort of horrible sort of existential crisis about. Not about turning 40, but just kind of like thinking about everything that I've done. and the stuff that I've done, both good and bad. And I've made mistakes, and I thought back about the last year as well from an argument perspective, and there's part of me that wondered at a time whether I was too combative in terms of some of the stuff I did, and I probably was to some people. There are some things I think I should have done better. There are things I think I should have done very differently. There are some things that I did well, and I think probably the weird thing is that BOTW kind of survives off of two major things. One, which is people just kind of being very receptive to what I say, which is cool. But the other thing as well is that I need, and this is the phrase I've had in my head for a lot of recently, is that I need to kind of polish the diamond that I have. And the diamond that I have is a bunch of things I get to do in my life. Like I have, like, where it's harder for people to own their own homes, I own my own home, and I have a wife, and I have a son, and I was in a very frustrating employment situation, which I got off my backside and changed myself and got a new job. And I've obviously got to do a lot of really cool things in hockey that people would like to do and don't get the opportunity to do so. And a chunk of that is down to good fortune, of course, and by being a big loudmouth. But a chunk of it as well is because I worked hard at it. And that's like the big lesson. When people ask me about doing this, I always say that it's just persevering. It's persevering with the things that you're passionate about. You will get there if you try. And I look, and sometimes I sort of see a lot of people, like, I wonder sometimes if people want to, some people want to do stuff and they just don't, and they kind of don't stick at it. And I always find that really, really sad, because they do well for a little bit, and then when it doesn't quite go as well as it could do, they just kind of let it fall away. And that's fine. You're within your rights to do that. But BOTW is literally down to just being a stubborn sod, and just being really pig-headed and just doing what I loved. And what I'd love to do was write and create stuff. And that was before the age we talked about kind of content. I just liked writing. I just really, really liked writing, and I still love writing, and I still love doing bits. And yeah, I do more video bits now, and I do more talky bits now, and I've branched out into a bunch of doing different things. But I do it because I really enjoy doing it, and I'd kind of do it for an audience of one. And I'm just fortunate I kind of don't, I don't do it for an audience of one. I do it because there's a bunch of folk like you who support me and put up with what I do, and it's cool. And British hockey's great. Like, ice hockey is the coolest sport in the world. Like, it's so different and so strange that it's just it's such a great way and such a great place to tell stories in, that it will. I think that's probably where people have looked in a world where people look for quick news and quick thoughts and quick feelings. I think the thing that has made me stand out is that I try to slow down the pace and let people ruminate on things. They can talk about their story, and then people can hear their stories, because those things will then kind of bounce on and then bring people to other stuff. And whether it's like Dante Abercrombie and founding and being the first coach of a university hockey team at a historically black school, or whether it's like Deacon Fielder and Josh Kelly from all those years ago, or whether it's like whether it's the biggest thing or the smallest thing. Like, I sit back and I think of like some of the stuff I've written, and I'm like really proud of things like Mara Reynolds from Elite Prospects and their story, and I'm really proud of things like the stuff I did with Steve Nightingale, who went from me literally watching him in goal for Invicta get lit up like a Christmas tree, to working for the New Jersey Devils, not as like a one-off thing, but like being employed in the National Hockey League as a guy who his then wife texting me going, "Is he all right?" Because he was just like, I think he faced 60 shots that night. Like, I am beyond fortunate, and I think it's probably why sometimes as well. And yeah, I've got an ego, of course I do. I think I'm good at what I do, because otherwise I wouldn't do it. But I'm so determined to keep holding the door open for the people who come after me, or the people who want to do other things, who need someone to go, like, who need someone to say, do it. I want to be that person who tells people to do things, because nobody did it for me. I did it for myself. And sometimes people don't have that that thing in themselves to say to do it. So if you need me to tell you to do it, I will tell you to do it. But either way, 4 decades on this earth, and Banners on the Wall is the longest creative endeavour of my life. It has changed me immensely for the fact as well, 13 years is close to half of my life doing one thing that has born into a bunch of really stupid things. And a lot of really good things as well. I mean, a lot of really, really good people, a lot of whom are, who've popped into the chat, and some I haven't met yet as well. So 24-25 is going to be mad. The pull of going back to Basingstoke will always be there because it is my club and it is my hockey home, and that will never ever change, no matter what happens with this refurb. But the anchor being cut is no bad thing. I get to walk back out into the world for another year. The Israelites did it for 40 years, and the Bible, I think I can manage to. And I thank you all as ever for joining me on that journey. It'll be an honour and a privilege for you to have you continue to do so throughout 24-25. And if you're at any of these Guildford Games and commentating app, come say hello. Can't give you the mic, but I can certainly say hello to you for bits and pieces. So, this is your reminder. Next Wednesday the 31st of July, the last Wednesday of July, because I should look at calendars properly, will be a full whack. All the graphics, all the shiny bits and pieces, BOTW What's Current stream. We will do all of the usual fixings. We will talk through bits and pieces. We will, we will go through all of the big news in all the deals that we did. Less kind of Q&A, more regular kind of show. Hopefully there'll be some other bits and pieces. And one of the other big reasons is because you might have seen last a couple of days ago where I posted that I turned up a week early for a meeting. I just misread my calendar. The reason why having the What's Current stream next week is going to be interesting is because of that call on Tuesday. I can't say too much yet. I can talk about it after the fact, but I don't want to... I'll leave you on that teaser. That I should hopefully have some interesting stuff to tell you next Wednesday night. Wednesday, 8 p.m, BOTW YouTube channel. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Banners on the Wall at webpress.com. At BannersOTW on Twitter, Banners on the Wall on Facebook, buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Take care of yourself and somebody else, as my friend Sky Walls would say for such things. But also, be happy, be safe, all the usual stuff. I'll do the proper outro next week. I feel old, but I don't at the same time. Quite strange. Either way, have a really good rest of your week. We'll see you back here next Wednesday. Thanks for joining in the fun. Stay safe. And I'll see you on the other side. And the start.